sharing each other's stories, because we don't believe it when we say we're fabulous and our business is worth it, but when our friends start saying it, customers believe it.
That is
so often, you know, your 10 best friends, you could set up a power networking group. Everyone has an online profile, whether it's on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, and use those channels because they're a lot easier than the old message, you know, broadcast marketing of where, you know, you just blurted your message out to everyone, whereas now people are looking for like-minded people who can solve problems. So I think, you know, getting a power group together of women where you're meeting up and maybe just holding each other, how are you going? How are you going? And, you know, focusing on the stuff that's going to bring dollars in the door.
Yeah, that's one thing that Launcher 40 wants to do is make sure that women have an encouragement, but also that touch of tough love to really start getting moving and then continue to move, because you really need to be persistent.
Yes. And, you know, I mean, look, I think a lot of times too, we fall in love with our businesses, and it can be hard sometimes when, you know, you get some feedback that maybe you need to change this. But, you know, going through my MBA and doing entrepreneurship, you know, we really do need to get that feedback is our friend. And at the end of the day, it comes down to what customers will pay for. So if you've got half of it right and you get feedback you need to change this, then you need to change it and not be so precious. And I think one of the other things we do as women and stuff is this whole perfection thing. Rather than getting out and getting going, we have to have all our I's dotted, our T's crossed. The business has to be perfect and look amazing before we'll even put it out there. And that's a real mistake, because at the end of the day, it's there to serve customers, and their feedback is what will make a difference. Because if you start listening to what they want instead of telling them what you think they want, you'll find a very different message. And that's what I found, certainly looking up all the research and everything on women and money, that most of the businesses were directed at the men. There was no supportive environment for the girls. And, you know, the girls wanted it to be wrapped around stories and support and a lack of judgment, you know, because they felt judged a lot of times.
Now, once people make the money, because I've also seen that a lot of people feel that if I just make more money, things will get better. But sometimes it's not how much money you're making, but what you're doing with the money. So
I actually think it's more about what you do with the money than it is about how much you're making. Because we all need to be saving. And, you know, one of our videos, you know, Guilt-Free Shopping, talks about managing your money in percentages rather than, you know, by the dollar amount. And shows you how to go about doing that. But, you know, the myth is that money will solve everything. It doesn't. It is about setting the supportive structures in place. And, you know, if there's, you know, it can be challenging as a woman. You know, there can be times in our lives, as I said, when cash flow goes down fairly drastically. And if you haven't got an emergency savings account, to get through that, it can be really difficult, and people reach out for the credit card. And I keep saying, if, you know, credit cards were really called liability cards, would we spend on them as women the way we do?
I would say no, but we don't think of it that way.
Exactly. But it's positioned, you know, it's positioned to have us overspend and not be in control. You know, I think the lack of financial education in schools and all the way through, when it's such an important topic and it affects every single person, is ridiculous. I mean, why is there not financial education in schools? And there just isn't. You know, there might be, you know, in Australia we tend to have, you know, the banks might get the kids setting up a bank account in primary school, and they've got to deposit some money in it, and they get some little, you know, rewards like McDonald's and things. But then these are the same banks that as soon as those kids are at university are offering them credit cards.
Without a job.
Without a job. Yeah, exactly.
And believe it or not, they do the same thing over here in the United States also. A lot of the banks are the ones who are teaching your children about money, and basically they're teaching your children that they're the people that you need to deposit your money with, and your money needs to sit with them while they take the money and invest it and give you a little piece of the pie.
Yes. And yet, if you borrow back money from the bank, they'll charge you a nice hefty interest rate, but it's your money that they're lending out and they pay you almost nothing.
Exactly.
1% or 1.5% or 2%. And yet, if you want to borrow it, especially on a credit card, it's all of a sudden 15%, 20%. So, it is about recognising that banks are, money's a useful tool, and credit and debt is a useful tool if you're using it to buy things that are going to go up in value, not down in value. And I think it's about understanding that the way we've been brought up financially, and most of us will listen to our friends on financial advice rather than someone who's gone through, understands ownership structures and all that sort of, how to manage money, a professional. Because there's been in the industry, I think, so many bad stories.
I agree.
We're reluctant to reach out and get a professional to help us. But I actually think it's really, really important that the plan comes first. It's a myth to say, I think having good financial habits and a plan on where you're going to go with your money is what gets you wealthy. It's a myth to say, well, when I've got money, I'll take care of it. I'll go get the advice then. But it's very expensive doing it that way.
So basically what you're saying is that basically we need to sit down, look at where we are and where we want to be, and put it on paper.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we've got to learn to understand it's goal setting, but it's adding the money to it. I mean, I think we all set goals. I was teaching at Bond University yesterday, the undergrads in finance, and they were sitting there glazed over at all the financial terminology. And I said, it's not that complicated. Let's cut out the jargon and think about it. Every one of you had set a goal to get to university. And you've had to work hard and get the OP scores and the grades to get in. And now you've got to learn to fund it, and you've got dreams of what your career is going to be at the end. All we're doing with money is making sure that it's doing the same thing. And I'm a real big believer in that, they used to say diamonds were a girl's best friend. I actually think pigs are a girl's best friend.
Pigs?
Pigs. I said this in a MBA class and financial planning, actually, and she uses it now with every student. But passive income generators, so things that where you've created a book or an audio program or something, whether it's an investment property, funds, but things that are going to bring in money passively. Because I think what most of us do is we've been taught go to university or go to school, get a job, and then spend what you earn and save what's left over. And I think that's backwards. I think it should be do what you want to do because it's your life you're trading, it's your time. So find a career that you actually love doing, and then you'll persist and get through the tougher times and all that sort of stuff because you really genuinely love it. And then you'll get excellent at it. But recognise that cash flow from that job is really not all spending money. It's part of it is setting you up so that you've got financial freedom later on. So saving, 10 or 18% of that from the beginning will be the thing that allows you to create investments and all that sort of buy life insurance and stuff online, and there's no medical checks, and you think you're saving money, but when it comes to claim time, something goes wrong, you need to claim. You've been paying this policy for 10 years, and because there was an example here where the husband was obese at the time when they got the policy, there were no checks, no medical checks, no nothing. they've been paying this policy for 10 years and they won't pay because they said he died of a heart attack, that it was a pre-existing condition.
Really?
Because he was obese. But if you go to a professional and get it, they'll have the check so that it's underwritten at the time that you take it out. So, so saving pennies sometimes is not the answer. You need the right financial strategies and insurances for you based on your situation. And a lot of them, you can bundle and save quite a bit. I mean, a financial advisor
into decisions.
Yeah, and that's it. That's why I set up Financially Fabulous. It's the same here. It's exactly the same here where women are walking in. I mean, one of my colleagues at Bond University was telling me she walked in to a financial planner. She had 3 children, married, and he's turned around and gone, well, why would you have 3 children? And then she also said, I'm not sure where to start. And he said, well, then how can I help you? And what did she do? She got out. Finding the right planner for you. And it's got to be someone that you can have real conversations with, that you don't feel judged, you feel supported. So without necessarily the financial planning, I mean, I'm looking at doing this globally because we've found out we were able to do it in America, Australia, New Zealand and the UK with live bank feeds. So you can actually, do all the profit and loss, and we can explain them and change the names of the things so we can actually educate women when they're seeing where they're going. And you can, mirror that if you continue this in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, it's not going to be a happy ever after. We need to tweak this. And, some people are going to find it a little bit confronting, taking control of your money, but it shouldn't be. It should be, as I said, I think it's something that should be celebrated. Because I think we're educated to not be in control of it. I think everything around us is teaching us the opposite.
So you're able to do it globally. And when you say that, you're talking about the education? Because I do know that some things in the United States is labeled different than some things in Australia and other locations. Yeah. But, I mean, it's after talking to you and some of my friends in the United Kingdom, it seemed like pretty much is almost the same across the globe as far as the situation with women, and also a lot of the financial, I would say, forms and perks and things we need to do.
Yep, it is. And I think that's where the education part comes in. So, yes, as a financial advisor in Australia, I can, do the whole kit and caboodle, but as an educator, I can be global. So, and the challenges are universal. I mean, this is not a uniquely American situation. It's not a uniquely Australian situation. Women across the globe are suffering financially. And even though we're making more money than we were and we're getting more educated, we're still generally being underpaid compared to men because we're not able to negotiate, or we don't feel comfortable negotiating. We think that if we just add lots of value, people will recognise us and pat us on the back. Doesn't work that way. You need to learn how to sell yourself and all that sort of stuff. But as I said, there's new software that's coming out that gives live bank feeds and things that I've been looking into, and we'll be able to do an educational thing. So I've done, my free Happily Ever After videos and workbooks that everyone can get hold of and just start working through. But that is a little time consuming, but it's fun too. I mean,